Hey, everyone. Sorry, I know the window opened up. And then the right window opens up, so I don't know if we were right.
Hey.
Hello. Yeah. Okay, I'm here. Yeah, welcome to the show. on playoff eve.
Yeah, I just had to say that driving up and down the QEW, which I've talked about many a time, and I've done it more than I've ever had in my life. Had in my life this year. Sometimes it's really a pain in the days like today where like everything went right. I hit almost every green light. I had to stop for gas and for money for the tolls and to get there and back. Everything went quick, and I got to Toronto. I left at 7 and got there by 8:45, which is the normal time without traffic. But we're talking about morning rush hour, and I somehow by some miracle got there at 8:45. But tomorrow I'll do the same thing, and I won't get there till 3 p.m. It's that hit and miss that it takes that long sometimes. It's really bizarre.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's a crazy drive. The train is great. You're taking the train a lot too, right? That's
well, the train is great, and apparently they're going to expand the GO train because it goes east from Toronto, it goes south from Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to expand it all the way, supposedly, to Niagara Falls, which will be great. But they'll probably do that about when I'm 60. So it's
it's going to take a while to do that.
Yeah.
You got a better chance using Elon Musk's tube thing than you do of getting on the GO train by then.
Hey, Kevin, we're live, just to let you know.
Thank you.
So don't you start your normal cursing tirade that you Kevin comes on and he's like,
come in blasting.
I am live here from Cranberry Township, Pennsylvania, which is the
welcome to PA.
The Penguins practice facility. I'm actually staying out here tonight. So
nice.
Went to Penguins practice. I know you guys did the Eastern Conference, but
no, we didn't do the series. I want to do it with you. I think we should do it with you while we should do the Penguins series tonight for sure, because while we have you, absolutely.
Well, we can talk about like what happened in the East. I mean, we're going to concentrate on the West because we didn't talk about them yesterday, but we only have you for a day, so we definitely want to talk about.
I want to get into because are you covering this whole series?
I am not actually. I'm going to bounce around a little bit too. I'm sorry I missed the pregame show because I would have talked about. I had never been to the Noodles Company before.
We're still in pre-show. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. Well, it's just such a bizarre place. Have any of you gentlemen been to the Noodles Company?
Absolutely. I've been to one in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, on a soccer tournament weekend. I think that's the closest one to me. But yep, it's really pretty.
What's so bizarre about it is I walked in thinking, well, I'll have a lot of Asian noodle choices, right. But it's noodles of all denomination and faith.
Yes,
so like it's Spätzle, and it's like
you could get butter noodles, you can get Italian, you can get Chinese style, Thai style, like it's just noodles.
Okay, I'm going there when we're all there for the Stanley Cup final, Kevin. We're going to the
I was pleasantly surprised. I would say I was even shocked by the Noodle House. So
Noodle across America. Yeah, no, I mean it's a beautiful thing. It is.
Yeah, no.
I completely agree with you.
No, there have been a couple ramen noodle places that have opened up over the last year or so in the Buffalo area.
Yeah.
And I always associate ramen noodles with
poverty.
with what we ate in college, the 99 cent, and those aren't pleasant memories. Those are like like salty chicken broth with bad noodles. Yeah. And I go to this place and it's completely different, but it's still it's the
still a ramen noodle.
Yeah, it's still a ramen noodle. So like I didn't like it. So now after Kevin says this.
Leaving aside the taste of ramen noodles, in my generation, it was Kraft macaroni and cheese for 18 cents a box.
I still like that.
But
macaroni dinner in Canada.
Those times though were the best of times. Like when you had $6 to your name,
really aren't,
and you had to make it last 9 days. And that included buying beer.
Yeah.
That was the best time in the world.
I totally agree with you. I look back at my university days of poverty with such a wonderful level of romance. I almost need to write a Harlequin novel about it. It's like the things we could come up with creatively were ingenious.
Well,
and it was fabulous. Like I remember
go ahead.
I was going to say the day that someone told me, well, you could actually take like a dollar store can of tuna and throw it in with your craft dinner. Like it blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, protein with my carbs. This is heaven.
I'll tell you, because Kevin talked about. I was always the guy who went out and got the beer because I'm not a big drinker, and in college everybody was all economics. It was okay. What can we get the most beer for the least amount of price? And in Buffalo, there was a store that sold generic beer. It just had beer on the can. It was a yellow can with black lettering, and it just said beer. And you could get a 24-pack of this for $4.99.
Oh man.
Beer. Wow.
Beer.
Yeah. I will say this. When you're in college and you're trying to buy beer with a group of human beings, everybody's a communist. You work together to buy beer. Okay. And you may have 39 cents and someone else may have 78 cents and someone else may have $1. But everybody throws in and you share the beer equally. Yeah. You're all communists when you're trying to buy beer in college when you have no money.
That is pretty amazing.
That's Svidanya.
Yeah. No, I mean that's just the way kind of it goes back then. But anyway, let's talk some hockey.
Let's go. Let's get
fired up. Playoffs are here.
This is
Peter,
it. I know.
Follow me, Peter.
Okay, we will do that.
We don't have Russ here to step out of order.
Like yesterday, yeah, April 10th, right? Okay. Hello, Hockey World. It's Tuesday, April 10th, 2018.
I'm Michael Lagello.
I'm Peter Tessier.
Kevin Allen, USA Today Sports.
And I am Eklund. You're watching the Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. We are so lucky to have Kevin Allen, who's on location in Pittsburgh to cover the first game in the Battle of Pennsylvania. And you're going to be the first two games there, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, that's the plan. We're going to have to see how it sort of plays out. I mean, I think the way we're going to do things is a little bit different than we've done in the past. Kind of check and determine where the story is and try to get to it. So we'll see. I mean, it's kind of a new plan. Usually I go and park myself for a while, but not this year.
It's interesting because you're really a severe lack of like your immediate Midwestern teams there, like some of your, Detroit, Chicago, St. Louis. That are right there. Obviously, Minnesota's pretty far away, isn't it, from where you live? Yeah,
it's not drivable for sure. Yeah, I mean, the drivable cities for me, which, and I like, to be honest with you, I prefer to drive in the first couple of rounds. Just I need Buffalo and I need Chicago, and now I can get to Columbus. So, and I may do that. Columbus is definitely an option, but Nashville's a little too far to drive. I fly to Nashville.
Yeah, Toronto's not that far, Kevin.
No, for sure. Toronto is an easy drive, to be honest with you. But the border crossing can sometimes be hectic, as you know. So depending on what the mood of the of the town is that night, is whether you're going to be stopped.
Wow. See, we look at it the other way. It's like we never know what the lineups are going south. And what weird questions we're going to get asked now. It's
never say you're an anonymous hockey blogger. We've learned that.
Oh, don't say anything weird. It's bad news right now.
Yeah, I've learned the what do you do? I'm a hockey writer. Okay, show us your website, HockeyBuzz.com. Where's your name on here? Well, I'm an anonymous hockey blogger. Okay, come with us, sir.
One interesting thing that Peter and Kevin, affecting the two series that you're focusing on, Winnipeg, Minnesota, and Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. I was talking to some reporters yesterday, and in Canada, the national game is Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. It's not Winnipeg, Minnesota, which is insane. I mean, I realize that, Sidney Crosby, game-winning goal, 2010, he's Canadian, everybody loves him, but Winnipeg has a legitimate chance to win a Stanley Cup. Toronto, I think they're more of a dark horse this year. I would think that Canadian broadcasting would be focusing on those two teams and wanting those two teams alternating every other night, and they're going to focus on Pittsburgh. It just baffled me.
Yeah, it's a bit of a controversy up here. And one of the things that came out today was that not only is the Winnipeg, Minnesota series not on the quote unquote free channel, it's also not even on the free to air if you were a satellite person. So you can't even pick it up on the airwaves. It's strictly cable. And the logic being, Rogers, you know, as we all know, went all in on the NHL. They paid a hefty premium for it. They're going to put one of their series that they can make money on and sell advertising on a channel that they make money from, rather than give it away for free. And that's the way they've chosen to do it. Now, should the Jets advance to the next round, and it is against Nashville, which is probably going to be, I think that'll change. But opening round, that's the decision they made. And I mean, given the money they're spending, you can't blame them.
And I got into not just a playful tete-a-tete with Dan Petru yesterday, because the news came out that NBC has moved, I believe it's Tampa, New Jersey, at least a couple games of that series, to the Golf Channel.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask, because you're essentially my curmudgeon in residence. You're who I go to in these situations, because I clearly do not understand why people are upset about that. Is not the Golf Channel just the station where you go? Like,
no, I
go to the Golf Channel.
Kevin, I think it's perception. I think it's what I think is, and Dan made the point that, you know, Golf Channel, there are more Golf Channels in more city, you know, on more cable networks than NBCSN. So that in a way it'd be more exposure, but it's just sort of the slippery slope of the NHL getting moved from NBC to NBCSN for the Kentucky Derby, the outdoor game being preempted for Saturday Night Live. It always looks like the NHL is being treated as a second-class citizen.
All right. You got to hold it right there, because, you know, obviously I have some history in covering this league, and I have suffered through Sports Channel America and coverage and everything else. And, you know, as much as I love my friends at ESPN, you know, when it was on ESPN, you never knew when NHL Tonight was going to be on.
Right.
And NBC has treated NHL so well. Like, you know, you got a nightly show all the time. All the playoff games are on.
Yeah.
You know, they give it like they treat it like it's the NFL. You know, and everything else. And now, because they want, like, to me, the golf people should be upset, because, you know, they're getting hockey on there, and you know, the Golf Channel has far reach, and NBC is just trying to, you know, fulfill their desire to get all the hockey games on, and they're just using one other place. Like, who cares whether you got to go, as long as it's just a station? Like,
you don't play golf at night anyway, correct?
Well,
I mean, am I wrong?
But the argument was they didn't want to preempt the programming on CNBC, and I think it was USA Network. And I've watched USA Network off and on. How many repeats of NCIS can you show?
Yeah.
If I don't get my Murder, She Wrote, I am going to be pissed off.
I don't know. I mean, to me, this is just one of those things that people are complaining about just to complain about. Like there's really.
That's right. That's why it's in my bailiwick.
That's why I consulted my curmudgeon in residence.
Absolutely. I mean, there are people.
You might be able to get some college to hire you as, you know, they have writers in residence. You can be the curmudgeon in residence.
Say I was a golf fan, and I was, you know, but not aware of the Golf Channel, which is very possible, because, you know, I'm 75 years old. I'm a fan of golf, and I'm like, I don't know that there's a Golf Channel on my television. So I'm, you know, since only old people are fans of golf. So I'm
HockeyBuzz's curmudgeon ombudsman. That's
you are. You fulfill that responsibility flawlessly. So if I'm a person who likes hockey. I mean, wants to watch the hockey, but doesn't know there's a Golf Channel. Now I might know there's a Golf Channel. I mean, that's also another thing that comes into this play. You know, like, I mean, you know, because you're hockey fans. Like, I could not tell you where the hell the Golf Channel is right now. But I'll
have to search. I've never watched. You know, I've never watched the Golf Channel in my life, so I'll have to search I know it's on there somewhere, but I'll have to find it, because I don't know where it is.
Yeah, it's right after the.
I watch it. I watch the Golf Channel.
Okay, so it's right after the badminton. It's after the badminton channel and before the baccarat channel, I think, somewhere in there.
Okay, let's.
Yeah, so you know, it's all this sports. They're down there. Anyway, yes. Let's talk about this before we are going to get to the West, but I want to, since we have Kevin and he's in Pittsburgh, I do think we should take this time to talk a little bit about the Penguins Flyers series, because it is a fascinating series. It is, although I do still believe that New Jersey and Columbus ran from Pittsburgh on the final day of the season. I think we do have a classic rivalry. And the funny thing about the Flyers, and the sense I get from Flyers fans, Kevin, is that they actually are happy about this series, because this team has been so up and down. No one knows if they're good or bad. You might as well play the Penguins. That's like the feeling that I'm getting around here. like you made the playoffs. You're not going for a long run. Might as well play the Penguins, because the last time was so much fun. I mean, that series was crazy.
Yeah, and I think there's a sense around the country that this Penguins team is vulnerable. I mean, they're the only team. This was my story today. Like I wrote, basically, like the odds makers in Vegas have them as only the 5th best team to win the cup, even though they won the last 2 cups.
Wow.
And I think, as I said, people view them as being vulnerable, mostly because, if you look at their statistics this year, they're the only team in the playoffs who's given up an average of 3 or more goals per game. That's pretty remarkable. But, they're a team that can sort of make up for the defensive deficiencies because they got Crosby and Malkin.
Yeah.
And they're 20th this year in goals against average. Well, they were 17th last year. So, and they still won the cup. Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's a little bit overblown.
Yeah.
I think what's a bigger issue is when you look at all the people that are missing, it's, to me, not so much what they represented on the ice, even though it was significant. But, guys like Kunitz and Hainsey, and particularly Marc-Andre Fleury, who was very, very important to the team chemistry in the room, those guys are all gone. So to me, as the pressure mounts, they miss all those guys. Cullen was good in the room as well, and all that kind of stuff. Now, maybe they won't because they get Crosby and Malkin and Letang and all the rest, but, that's an issue. But I think everybody's kind of underappreciating the danger level still of this Penguins team. Like, it's still a very good team.
Yeah. So, if I had money, I'm making that bet, because I haven't watched them in 2 playoffs before. I don't see any reason why they can't go just as far this year. I think this year is actually somewhat easier, at least in the Eastern Conference, to get there. And I feel that way, at least. I mean,
well, the one thing I was concerned with the Penguins, looking at their their situation. I mean, we talked about it before, Kevin, when you were on the show. The fact that one half of the defense from last year, Daly, Cole, and Hainsey are gone, and I think they've taken a little bit of a step back on the blue line. But they went out and they made that really great deal to get Brassard, and Brassard is hurt to start the playoffs. And I don't know if you saw him skate.
He's getting ready. He's practicing.
Okay, so he's not far away, but he may not start the series, and I think they need that guy, because we saw in the last couple of years that offense generated by that third line with Bonino, with Kessel playing on that third line, it provides a matchup problem for all these teams that they play.
I actually think Riley Sheehan could step in there. He's reasonably skilled for a guy that is a 3rd and 4th line contributor, and he's got size and he can skate, and his hands around the net are actually quite good. But that's not the plan. Obviously, they need Brassard, and Brassard obviously played very well for the Rangers in the playoffs a few seasons ago.
Right, and he played pretty well for Ottawa last year too. So
So it's going to be an interesting series. I've been very impressed by the Flyers this season. I was one of the many that thought that they were going to be near the bottom. I loved their young defense. I just didn't think it was going to be ready, and boy, sure has been. Provorov, he's one of those guys that I think everybody should circle his name and watch him in this series. Because, he didn't get enough credit for the season he had this year.
No, he didn't, and it's really interesting because I joked about it with Russ and the Flyers, press, talking to people about the fact that Provorov almost feels like he's not being coached. Like I've never seen a young player that they've given just absolute freedom to do whatever he wants to. Like normally when you see a young defenseman like that, they'll be like holding him back or saying, take all the chances you want or something. With him, he's so mature that they treat him like he's a 32-year-old, not, and they really just let him go. And because of that, he does get caught once in a while, but he also scored 2 incredibly huge goals for the Flyers last week, from within the crease of the other team's goalie, as a defenseman.
But and part of that with young players is when they have that kind of skill that Provorov has, you can take the approach to let them go and do their thing and give them guidance rather than that hands-on coaching that is another approach, right? And say, I'd rather correct you when you make the mistakes so you're aware of what's going wrong, as opposed to trying to prevent you from making mistakes. It's a different approach.
Yeah.
And there's some upside to it. And I think the other thing is and Kevin, you'd have an understanding of this, and Russ would too if he was here, is the top end guys that are coming into the NHL now, like these top 10 draft picks that we see year after year, are so well prepared. They're so knowledgeable. They're night and day from what we saw 10, 15 years ago, even just their conditioning, their ability to play at a higher level, and what they understand of the game. And I think it takes a different sort of mentality of coaching them. And you're seeing that with a player like Provorov. Like, you don't need to teach him how to play the game. You need to help him learn the nuances of the pro game.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Like, they come into the game now, and a lot of them have nutritionists that they've hired to work with them. And we've talked about this before, but it bears repeating. During the NHL media tour, I was stunned at how many players told us that, one guy in particular, Charlie Cohn, brought up that he has all of his meals prepared and they're shipped to him. So, he gets nutrition throughout the season. It's perfectly, cooked to his specifications. And, we've gone such a long way now in terms of the way we prepare the players, and they all have, skills coaches and skating coaches, and like they're ready to go. And most of them have lived in the weight room in the off season as well. So that used to be the biggest thing. In the 1980s, guys used to step in, guys like Howard Chuck and Yzerman, and be instant offensive stars. Well, it's because strength wasn't a big part of the game back then.
Right.
And then the veteran players got in the weight room, and then the younger players couldn't handle that. And then we didn't see that anymore. Plus, there's a lot more hooking and holding, and they didn't have the strength to fight through it. Then we sort of altered the game a little bit, and then younger players were able to sort of compete. And now they're just as strong as the veterans because they've prepared themselves. So,
well, I mean, physically is one thing, but in covering the Leafs the last couple of years and being in Buffalo and being aware of what's going on with the Sabres, I have to say that the young guys, Matthews, Nylander, Marner, that, the center of the hockey universe, the pressure, the media, it really hasn't fazed them. They've been able to handle it extremely well. And Jack Eichel last year had a little bit of difficulty, but if you see like the comments that he made at the end of the season this year, it took him a year to maybe grow up a little bit. He's phenomenal now. He seems ready. Mike Harrington wrote a piece in the Buffalo News today saying that Eichel is ready to be captain of this team. These young players, they come in at 18 years old, and they really don't need much preparation. They've learned what to do and how to handle things, and that's great.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
I don't know what it is. I don't know why, but you're so right. I mean, and you really have seen it, like you said, nowhere more so than the Flyers' young defense. Gostisbehere third in scoring among defensemen this year. Provorov plays his time on ice is equivalent to PK Subban. It's like you look at these guys; these are really young players, but they're completely they pushed it up, and and they're not even playing one of their better young defensemen right now. And I don't know if he's going to play in the series or not, in Robert Hagg, because he was really good this year, but suddenly kind of fell out of favor. He's their best hitter, probably the best checking. He's up there in hits. He was up there until he got scratched, but he was one of the leading hitters in the NHL. So, that's the biggest source of contention in Philly is why is he getting he's not getting ice time where a guy like Andy McDonald is getting all this ice time. So there's a lot of different. I mean, that's to me the problem with this series, and then we will move to the West, but is going to be in goal for the Flyers, which is it sounds like a broken record, but the reality is that Brian Elliott had like a 5.23 goals against average against the Penguins this year. You know, he does this is going to be an issue, you know, and then I looked and saw Mrazek hasn't really played the Penguins very well in his career. You know, and he fell into his, you know, old habits here in Philly too. Neuwirth has played them better than us, but no one even knows if he's really when he's going to be able to play. So
yeah, that injury, it looked really, really bad. I mean, it looks to be deceiving, but I'd be surprised if he didn't tear his groin on that play.
But this is the same thing I said in 2010 when we were going into the playoffs too with the Flyers, you know. And remember that was Leighton and Boucher, and no one knew how they beat the Rangers in a shootout to get into the playoffs with Boucher, but suddenly they were in the Stanley Cup Finals. So I don't know. The difference I think between the 2006 series when these teams played, which was or 2009, yeah.
You're talking about the wild.
Yeah, there's one of the.
No, it was 2012 or 2013.
Yeah.
Okay, 2012. Yeah, it was one of my favorite series of all time. Right, it was just unbelievable, back and forth. I really get the sense that the Penguins are more are a little bit more mature, and I think the Flyers got to their maturity at that point. They managed to get it, and the thing is, Flyers team is really not nearly as rough of a Flyers team as that Flyers team was. This Flyers team is, I mean, they're one of the least penalized teams in the NHL. They don't really have, I mean, they've got Gudas, but beyond him, you know, they really don't have any goons.
Yeah. Well, let me ask Kevin this to start talking about the West here. Kevin, it's my belief that Vegas got the absolute worst first round matchup they could have gotten by getting the LA Kings. I mean, maybe Anaheim would have been worse, but I think personally this is the end of the Cinderella story. Maybe they can win a couple games. To me, I think LA is poised to destroy them.
Well, destroy is kind of a hard.
Yeah, that's just my.
Yeah, but I've looked at some of the projections, and of our 4-person projection group, I was the only one to take Vegas, and I took them because you know, it's almost as if everyone just says, well, you know, they haven't been there before, so they can't possibly win, and the championship aura that you know, the Kopitar-led veterans on the Kings will be too much, and on paper that looks right, but you know, the one thing I'd say about this Vegas team is that they've exceeded expectations almost since inception. So, you know, we'll have to see. Vegas is a hard place to win in. We know that. You know, I see why everybody's picking. I mean, it really seems like 90% of the people are picking the Kings. So, but I see why everybody's doing it. But I still have some belief in that team.
And Marc-Andre Fleury, you know, I mean, he can do the random element.
That's the other thing too. You know, you were saying it's the wrong team too, because they also have Quick, you know, who to me is just a perfect playoff goal. He has the right temperament for it. And, like he can match Fleury for sure.
The thing about Vegas right now is LA knows sort of the players within LA understand the adjustments of what it takes as a team when you hit the playoffs. And they've been one of those teams when they have won Stanley Cups where they almost sort of flipped a switch, and it came playoff time and they went into a different sort of style of play. The Golden Knights, they've been, I mean, let's use an analogy here. They've been playing with house money all season long. And eventually, you know, it's the house always wins, and I think it's going to catch up with them, not because they can't win or they shouldn't or just the law of averages, but I think Lance had them so well tuned that now he's got to retune them, and he's got to retune them against an opposition that knows how to do this way too well,
right?
And that's where the challenge is. And you know, maybe they steal a win here and there and make it a different one, but I just don't think they're going to be able to do the level of adjustments on top of what they've already done and play at the pace and level any more than they have. And it just seems that LA's got that finite point within them that they can change it for Vegas. And that's just how I see it.
I give Vegas all the credit in the world because nobody saw it coming, but I was thinking they were going to finish dead last. I mean, I didn't think this was gonna end up anywhere close to this, but what you're saying, Peter, and what I sort of believe is I don't know if this team has another gear. They've been playing.
Yeah, that's a great way of saying it, Mike.
They've been playing this way all year, and it's amazing. But now you really have to step it up to a higher level, and they've been at this certain level for 82 games, and I just don't know whether that team has the next level. I mean, Fleury standing on his head is possible.
I'm going to agree.
They don't have a Doughty and they don't have a Kopitar, so there's a matchup problem there.
Yeah, but I think I know why, Kevin, you went with them, and I think it's the same reason that I'm going to go with them too. With Vegas, and it's in my pick, and there is. I mean, I've been saying that other level thing all year, but you got to put yourself into the underdog mentality. And if Vegas had drawn Colorado in the first round, it would have, or St. Louis, Vegas would have been the favorites in the series, and that wouldn't have played as well, I think, to a young group of players. Like it's one thing to choke under pressure. It's another thing to have everybody rooting against you, which Vegas is used to. And to me, this is almost the perfect situation for them because they are looking at a team that no one's going to hold it against them if they lose to the Kings in this series. No one's going to say that they're a disappointment. Obviously, no one can. They're the best expansion team in the history of sports. But no one's going to expect them to beat the Kings. I think that's the best situation they can possibly be in. And the Kings are not the Kings that used to just turn it on in the playoffs. Like this is not that same Kings team that won Stanley Cups. I don't think they are. I mean, they've got some players from them, but it's not the same. I mean, they don't have the depth that those teams had.
Well, it's different depth. I mean, Muzzin's hurt right now, and I don't know what his status is to start the playoffs.
And that's huge.
But it is. But they have they have that younger generation, the Kempes, the Ifalos. They have some younger players coming up, and Carter is back. And Kopitar Kopitar last year had a horrible year, and this year, he's probably in the race for the Selke. I wouldn't be surprised if he's in the race for the Hart. So I mean, I think they're a different team than the one that won cups a few years ago. But I think there's that playoff success thing still there with that team.
I don't know. I mean, like when I think of that playoff team, I think of Justin Williams, and I think of
right.
I mean, so I'm not so sure.
And Gaborik, and they were, right. They were much deeper.
Yeah, but it's still the heart of that team was it's Kopitar and Quick and Doughty
and Brown, and Brown's had an unbelievable year, of course. But
yeah, Jeff Carter, Alec Martinez. There's enough of those guys. They still have a championship aura, and they have a bunch of guys that know how to win. The Vegas is kind of going out of the way to paint themselves as underdogs, but I don't actually believe they believe.
Right.
And I think
maybe. I mean, that is true with everybody right now, right? Like everybody is loving that. This is the time of year when every press conference is how you're going to lose. How they're such a great team on the other side. But I think
Mike Babcock said the Leafs were the underdog. The Leafs had 105 points, and because Boston had 112, they're the underdog. I mean, I get the game.
Bruins in every game they played them. So I mean, I don't understand how the Leafs are the underdog against the Bruins.
Well, I know. No,
I just don't get it. But I mean, this is a series that was even. Right. They played each other even. But I mean, I wanted to talk a little bit about St. Louis, like a team that's out of it, because we are going to get to this more in the future, as far as like picking the actual things. But like where the Blues go from here, I think is one of the more interesting ones for this offseason.
Maybe they signed Tavares.
Well, I mean,
they've got the room now.
Well, you knew where Doug Armstrong thought this team was at the deadline when he traded Stastny for a first and a fourth round pick and a prospect. So, I mean, the fact that they sort of rebounded in a way and got to game 82 with a chance to make the playoffs, I would say was positive. But the thing is, they lost Gunnarsson, they lost Bouwmeester.
Yeah,
Tarasenko got hurt in game 82, so everything sort of fell apart. What I think is the question, Kevin, is their goaltending has been a problem for that organization. They traded for Ryan Miller, they traded away Ben Bishop. Elliott is not a solution. Jake Allen now is, I think, in the category of being a failure there. So Armstrong's really got to address the goaltending, but also I think he's got to address a couple other issues. So they're sort of a team in flux right now.
Well, for sure, and more issues than he thought. Like I think that that it wasn't long ago, months ago, that we thought the Blues had one of the best defensive groups in the league, and but through poor goaltending, and they just didn't measure up. When you look at where that team was at, and it really has started when Schwartz went down. When he went down, it's almost like they couldn't recover, and that's always a bad sign when you can't overcome, a single injury. Now they had other injuries, but that was obviously, the big one for the Blues. But boy, that's a leaky boat right now, and if you're looking at it, you're thinking too, well, we played so well at the beginning. What if we were healthy again? Yeah. And that's dangerous when you start thinking like that.
Well, that's the gamble, right? For Armstrong is he has to measure out the severity of the injuries and their contributions to the season,
right? And
then decide, okay, can I expect an 80% recovery from those injuries in terms of games played that I've lost this year? How does that affect the outcome of the season? It seems to me though that if and injuries happen, you can't plan on them, and you always have to plan against them. That the Blues, if Armstrong gambles that way and doesn't start evoking a gradual change, he's going to end up in the nether regions where you can't get over the hump, and you're never bad enough to get some luck and end up with a top 5 pick. Yeah. Right. You sort of have to. The NHL seems to me that when you get into these positions, the organization has to make a harsher determination to go back to rebuild sooner and faster with a more direct purpose than ever before, because you can get lost in space really easy if you don't do it the right way.
And they have a very, very good young crop of prospects with Kyrou, with Thomas, with Jake Wallman, with Klim Kostin. So it might where they may go is they may go young and maybe move some bodies out, move a Patrick Berglund out. They already moved Stastny out. They may go that direction. But where I think all things point in terms of that team is goaltending. They're the Philadelphia of the West. I think Philadelphia's always
don't put that on them. That sounds horrible.
But I mean, Philadelphia's had that. Carter Hart may be the solution for them. He's 2 years away.
The Sharks used to be the Flyers of the West. Now the Blues are. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. No, I'm with you. But the weird thing, I talked to somebody about when the Stastny trade went down, and I said, wow, and I talked to somebody at the NHL, and I said, that's really kind of a strange move, I thought, because they're not out of the playoff run here. I mean, they were very much in it still when they moved Stastny, and he probably, they traded Shattenkirk last year when everyone thought they had a really legitimate shot. Like they actually, this is a matter of Armstrong hating to lose players for nothing and going to the players and saying, you're going to sign here, I guess, and them saying they're not. And I guess they move out. That's what it feels like.
Now they got 2 first-round picks, and it doesn't mean that they're going to draft with 2 first-round picks. They could use one of those firsts and trade it for somebody. I mean, team like Calgary is looking for a first-round pick, and they've got a boatload of defensemen. So you never know that the deal could happen like that.
The Maple Leafs made it okay to rebuild.
Right.
To announce rebuilding. Although now we know that the Rangers' rebuilding efforts lasted 60 days.
Yes.
Because now it looks like they're going full war in typical Ranger fashion after the 2 hottest free agents.
Well, that's the point of irritation in Buffalo right now, Kevin, because the Leafs turned it around in probably 18 months, and the Sabres started their rebuild before the Leafs did, and they're still in it. And that's the point of frustration in Buffalo, is that they can't get out of the rebuild, and it's because of the moves that Tim Murray made, and because of bad luck with injuries. That luck has something to do with it. So
much to do with it.
Yeah, and they didn't get Connor McDavid. They got Jack Eichel. There's nothing wrong with Jack Eichel, but
no, nothing at all.
But, and the Leafs got Austin Matthews. I mean, this is how it plays out. I mean, there's so much luck, and that's if I'm a team, I'm not going to rebuild based on Toronto's methods, because you got to get so lucky on that. On top of that, to do that as well.
It was luck, and it was also design. They were able.
It was all design, but there was a design that depended on luck. I mean,
no. I'm not talking about that. I mean, I'm talking about they got rid of Phil Kessel, and they got value for him. They got rid of a $7 million contract in Dion Phaneuf, which 2 years later has already been traded once again. They were able to get rid of big money contracts, and that helped them in terms of being able to add the right players in free agency, like Patrick Marleau this year.
And get worse.
Buffalo, in the midst of the rebuild, added Evander Kane and Zach Bogosian, who's taking permanent residence on the injured reserve. So that's what I'm saying. It was more design. It was just as much design as it was luck.
Underappreciated moves in Toronto's rebuild were the decisions to keep Van Riemsdyk and Van Riemsdyk and Kadri.
Yeah.
Like that was all part of it. I mean, that's why Lou Lamoriello and Babcock know what they're doing. You know, they made the decision to see what Kadri could do, and where some GMs in a rebuild might have moved him out. Right. He wasn't fun to deal with in the early years.
Now, let me go back to the West here, Kevin, because the team that I picked in the preseason was Anaheim, and it looked like a sort of a skittish pick. But at the end of the year, they're basically where they were last year. Kessler's back after being injured. But Fowler's out. I don't know for how long. They say he might be out for the first round and maybe back for the second. They may be starting Ryan Miller because the health of Gibson is in question. And last year it was Jonathan Bernier as the goalie instead of Gibson, and I think instead of Miller. And I think Miller's an upgrade. But what do you think about Anaheim? Because I still think that there's a pathway for them.
Oh, for sure. I mean, they weren't that far removed from getting in the Stanley Cup final last year. And, it all comes down to Getzlaf and Kessler down the middle. Who can compete with that? Those are big, ornery guys who are hard to move, and their defense is mobile. And their transition game is strong. They can, move the puck. And they've, Henrique was a good addition. More goals, secondary scoring. There's a lot going on in Anaheim. This is a team that's built to be successful, and they're a much better playoff team than they are a regular season team. Although Gibson can't stay healthy, that's been an issue. Now that's always just kind of bad luck, but they're quite capable of making an extended run. Like they're a team you don't want to play. You hope someone else knocks them off.
Yeah, no, I think when things click for Anaheim, they're not a team you want to play against. You'd prefer to avoid them if they're firing on all cylinders. But that being said, they're not complete. And when I say complete, I mean there are holes in their roster. Their depth on their bottom six is not fantastic. Right. Their defense is good. It's a good defense. No outstanding sort of superstar caliber, but it's good.
But they're going to miss Fowler.
They're going to miss Fowler. I think where they can get beat is that if you put them into a track meet, they're a little older, and Kessler's he's a fast guy and he can move up and down the ice. But you start getting Getzlaf and Perry to go on a track meet, they're going to get gassed, because the other thing is Carlisle will lean on them.
Yeah,
you want to put a track meet on, and you get them and you get ahead. You're gonna gas them a bit. They're still not. They're big, strong guys, but they're not the fastest guys. And when the minutes pile up, you can see a little advantage there for the opposition.
But Peter,
you got to get to that point though.
But Peter, last year, at certain points, the guys who were the leaders were not Kessler and Getzlaf. It was Silverberg. It was Raquel. It was Kasha, Richie. They've added Henrique. So, I mean, I grant you, if they get into a long series and it's against a team with a lot of speed, that those guys, may be gassed a little bit. But they do have depth in the second and third lines. And, their defense is really good. I think they definitely need Fowler if they're going to make a deep run. But I still think that there's a lot there. And Miller played great with Vancouver last year, and he's played pretty well as the backup. So unless he gets hurt, they're in okay shape.
Yeah, and Miller's been good this year too.
Very good.
Yeah.
I mean, and the other thing I want to talk a little bit about with Kevin is the Predators situation, because it's funny. Today I heard on the radio on XM. I was listening to XM, and they said that the Predators, last year took everyone by surprise. This year they won't take anyone by surprise. Everyone's gearing for them. They're the top team, and all this, and that's going to affect them in in what people are thinking is going to be a negative way. That they're going to have a tough time with that. And I don't get that kind of sense from this Predators team.
No,
there's so much there. This is not even remotely the same Predators team. Like the defense improved. Ekholm has taken a step up in his game. Ellis is a little bit better. Plus, they have all the benefits of having made an extended run last season. They know what is required of them in order to be successful. Pekka Rinne, that to me the biggest thing for the Predators is that Rinne is playing as well as he did last season, maybe even a little better.
Better going into the playoffs. I mean, he wasn't that great going into the playoffs.
no.
Yeah. But then he played great against Chicago.
He was great in the playoffs, but going into the playoffs,
yeah. So he's been tremendous, and they've got more depth on their offense, and they've just got a lot going on. The Hartman deal at the end, I made this comment to another general manager that when you talk to David Poile this season, I have felt kind of a peace and calmness with him that you don't usually get. He's just always nervous about his team and everything, and I think it's because he knows he has done all he can, and he's put together a team that is capable of winning.
Yeah.
Now it's just up to them. Can they get it done? And some of it isn't up to them as well, because we always want to discount the performances of the other teams. And the Winnipeg Jets are a very good team. There's some teams in the West that could beat them as well. I think they're the team to beat. I took them to win it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, to me, reminiscent of when the Red Wings and Penguins, dueled, and the Red Wings won the cup, and then the Penguins went to school, and the following year they came back and won it. I see that with the Predators this year.
Yeah, I think. Go ahead, Peter.
I was just going to say the Predators have, this year, they haven't been a secret to anyone. They've been playing at the top. They've been taking all comers, and they're used to being the top dog. And that's part of the evolution of a team getting better is when you're at the top, you've got to deal with all the other people trying to knock you off.
Yeah.
And they've done a really good job of it.
Yeah.
And that now it's on steroids because the stakes are that much higher, and you have to, you have the series that changes the dynamic too. And they're built for this exact season now, the second season. This is what Poile's done. He's made them into this. Now they just have to sort of execute. It's on Laviolette, the coaches and the players, to say, this is our time. Everyone else has done what they can to get us here. We've got to do the next part.
Well, I've never seen a team, and David Poile should get credit for this. I've never seen a team, emulate the teams that they have battled over the last few years and take it as, and apply it to their own team. I mean, LA has got Kopitar and Carter. Anaheim has got Getzlaf and Kessler. They lose to the Penguins, who 1, 2, 3 were Crosby, Malkin, and Bonino. They signed Bonino. They trade for Turris, and now up the middle you have Johansson, Turris, Bonino, and Mike Fisher as your fourth line center. I mean, last year, Colton Sissons was their number one center. They pair this strength up the middle with arguably the best defense in the league and a guy who could win the Vezina. I mean, the reason that they're the presumptive favorite because they're the best team.
Yeah,
they're first in goaltending in terms of Vezina trophy will go to Rinne. Yeah. They're first in defense. Nobody can match their personnel, and they're seventh in the league in scoring.
That's the crazy thing.
So that's it. Those numbers are. It's to me reminiscent of when the Blackhawks were in their run. You'd look at their numbers at the end of the year, and they'd be second or third in defense and second and third in scoring. It's very solid.
Chip on their shoulder too. Like that's the thing about when you get a team like, I don't know, like the Rangers or or the Canadians who are dominating. They do think they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. But the Predators, I get the sense of talking to them that they still have a chip on their shoulder. They're still a Nashville team. I think they're accepted, but they earned that acceptance last year. But I don't think that they are completely, they still expect people to say things bad about them.
Yeah. Well, let's just say I don't think they're going to get caught sleeping and Colorado is going to sneak up on them. And I could be off base on this. I think Colorado won their Stanley Cup already, and that was getting in the playoffs after finishing with the worst record or one of the worst records in history. Them getting to the postseason is a remarkable accomplishment for that organization. But they have Jonathan Bernier in goal. They don't have their number one defenseman in Eric Johnson. I don't see how they win a game in this series. Maybe they sneak up on Nashville, or maybe Rene has a bad game, but I don't see how Nashville, even gets scared by the Avalanche.
Well, McKinnon is McKinnon, right? So
he's great. I'm not saying he's
to me he can definitely steal a game, but the fact that they don't have their goalie, that's what really kills Colorado. I mean, you can't expect to upset a team, with your backup. When their top goalie, Varlamov is a good goalie. He could steal a game or two. I mean, and nothing against Bernier but like we just talked about Bernier and on another team last year in the playoffs. So, and it didn't work out so well. So I'm just saying that this is how it all plays out, right? So,
but Winnipeg, Minnesota is the only series we really haven't touched on. And Peter, over the last couple months, I've followed the Jets more and more simply because we're going to talk about them because you're on the show. But I mean, Minnesota, they have Dubnyk. They don't have Ryan Suter. I think that's a big loss. I mean, the Wild have had a successful season, and they have that 1-2 punch of Stahl and Koivu up the middle. So they're not somebody you can look past. But Winnipeg has just been so overpowering this year that I just can't see them lose to Minnesota.
Winnipeg's had 1 3-game losing streak all season. So they are going to have another streak at some point in this, I think, even if it go alternate. So they're going to have to lose 2 in a row at some point.
Yeah.
And I just don't think it's going to happen against Minnesota. That being said, the games have been fairly close. The last time the teams met was in January, and it was a 4-1 Minnesota win in St. Paul. But the Jets won 7-2 before that. Then they had a 2-1 overtime win, and I can't remember what the other one was, like another 3-1 or something. The Jets have been the better team. They've outscored them. They've had better power plays and such. I've written about this twice now. Mm-hmm. It's when you get into the underlying numbers is that you realize Minnesota is doing something that is making them better than what their raw numbers say. And I think they're doing a lot better down low. I think they're getting into scoring position. And I think Dubnyk and their goalie tandems have been really good at preventing those high danger scoring chances against. Yeah. They've survived that way in a good way, but they're not riding some outrageous save percentage or a ridiculous shooting percentage as a team. So, something Boudreau has cooked up with their offense and some of their defensive coverage has actually worked really well for them. Will that work against Winnipeg over 7 games? Yeah, I don't think so. I think the Jets are going to overwhelm them. Patrick Laine has been quiet. I expect him to heat up pretty quick here, I think. And the best thing a team can do is try and take Laine away, because with having a player like Stasny and the other weapons the Jets have down the depth, that's fine. You want to take Laine out of the picture, we'll throw a bunch of other things at you. And that's going to be the challenge for the Wild, is how do they manage dealing with Laine and then the depth of the Jets' third and fourth lines that can come at them, where Maurice could, in theory, put Matthew Perreault back on the fourth line if he wanted to. And create a matchup hell for Boudreau.
What do you think, Kev?
For sure. I just don't think without Suter that the Jets can, that the Wild can handle the Jets in any way, shape, or form. That, like, to me, the Jets are the most dangerous offensive team in the tournament, even more dangerous in many respects than the Penguins. I just think they have more, weapons. So I know people, including myself, think that the Predators will handle the Jets in the second round, but if the Jets beat them, I wouldn't be stunned. The thing about the Jets that I found most impressive wasn't that all long ago that their defense, looked like a patchwork quilt, and now you look at it, and boy, there's some skill on that defense.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead, Peter.
I was just going to say, oh, that's a weird delay.
Yeah, weird echo. Sorry.
Okay. So the thing with the Jets defense is right now, and what no one's talking about is they're missing their big acquisition from the offseason, which is Dmitry Kulikov, and who elected not to have surgery on his back after the last injury. And there is word that if he were to come back, he could be back in the second or maybe third round. But the Jets defense, you've got Morrissey, Trouba, you got Bufflin. Enstrom is believed to be skating coming back, although there's some rumor that there is a fracture in his foot, but it's totally unsubstantiated from what we can tell, but there is talk about that. And then you've got, yeah, he'll play, keep him in his boot, freeze it. And then you've got Myers and a host of either Pullman, Sherratt, or whatever. As long as the defense doesn't get carried away with itself in terms of Myers and Bufflin being a little rogue on some of their playing, they can hold down the fort quite well. It's not Nashville's defense. No. It's not as mobile. It's not as complete, but it's good enough to get the job done. But the players have to play within the scope of the team dynamic and not go too freewheeling. And Bufflin and Myers are prone to do that.
And Hollaback's going to have to play like Hollaback has played all year. Kevin, are you surprised in Detroit that it was status quo? Holland signs for 2 years and he announces they're going to go with Blashill again?
Well, I had thought earlier in the season, I suspected that Holland would be back. You know, the family has a lot of loyalty, the Ilitch family, even though Mike Ilitch has passed away. You know, Chris Ilitch doesn't have a track record, so we didn't know for sure what he was going to do, because mostly, even though he was running the team, it was sort of Mike's will, be done. But I suspect that, because I knew how Marion Ilitch felt about Ken, that he would be back. But I thought they might make a change of coaching just as sort of as almost a sacrificial lamb to the fans who are really in an uproar. They want change, but he didn't. And to be honest, that's the fair thing to do. Blashill, none of this is his fault. The personnel is simply not good enough, and he's a quality coach, and he'll do a good job if he's given the right personnel. And I'm not sure next year will be much better, because all the younger players have some flaws to them that I'm not sure can be washed away over a one-off season. So, a lot will depend on how ready Rasmussen is next season and who they get in the draft, and whether they can get one of the guys who can step in and play right away. Because at this point, I think the Red Wings are selling hope and not the idea that they can make some noise in the playoffs.
If the Red Wings fan base is infuriated, what are the Islanders? Because
that's so sad what happened there. I really don't know. Like, I don't even have any sense at all of whether Garceau is in trouble. I mean, historically, you'd look at that and you would say, well, he should be in trouble.
Be, right? Yeah.
You just look at it from what they've accomplished, and boy, that team just went downhill, in a hurry. You look at the way they started; they were a great offensive team. I don't know. When's the last time you saw a team play that sloppily defensively?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was amazing how many goals they gave up this year in this no scoring era. It was just really phenomenal. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. And if Tavares goes, boy, where's that team at? Like, who's the flag carrier? Who's the guy you turn to? Like, they have some nice players there. Anders Lee has turned out to be a very nice, player. And Bailey has stepped up now and is an offensive player, and they have other players, but
it seems that they're sort of pushing or prodding Barzal into that. He's going to be the guy if Tavares leaves, and I think that's a little bit. He'll win he's probably going to win the Calder, but I think that's a little bit of too much pressure on a guy who's 20.
Well, I mean, that's what we do in this league, though. The younger players have to.
Yeah.
In Toronto, it was Matthews, and in Detroit, it's Larkin, and that's just the way it goes. And he's certainly capable of that. He's just such an amazing, dynamic player. And I think you're absolutely right, Mike. I think that's what they'll do. They'll just anoint him as the guy. But boy, and the timing with the. Going and playing games in the old arena and, the new arena. Oh, boy. Like, this is just, No,
and yesterday the co-owner came out and said that he was fine with both the coach and the GM, so that really got the Islanders fans
Right, but then he said that they were going to evaluate. Like it was a half answer.
He talked both ways, obviously, but his first response was, "We're fine with them." And then I think when people in the press conference started pushing him and saying, "How the hell could you be fine with them?" he started to say, "Well, we're going to reevaluate." But initial response was, "We're fine with them." And if everybody in that room had said, "Oh, okay, great, you're fine with him," I think that's all would have happened. That's the impression I got from watching it again.
What we talked a little bit about this yesterday, and the thing I think we didn't touch on with the Islanders is you've got a PR campaign amongst fans with billboards and stuff. All the Hideki had to do was just throw a little fuel on that by saying, well, we're going to review everyone and no job is safe. There's no sacred cows, and just sort of say that. And, you'd have a bigger problem on your hand, because the last thing you want to do is take that volatile situation and add a little fuel to it to change expectations, right?
But so they have to say that right now. Like this fan base is dying. I mean, and this is a great fan base. This is a really passionate fan base. They have to throw them a bone. They cannot, and then with Tavares leaving or potentially leaving, they can't sit there and say that they're okay with their general manager and their coach. Unless Tavares told them, and I said yesterday, unless Tavares has said, "I'm only staying if the GM and the coach are staying," and that's some conversation that's happened that we don't know about.
The only bone that the Islanders fans would be satisfied with is the skull of Garth Snow on a platter. That's what they want, and that's what the whole billboard campaign is about. They're tired of I don't think he's up there in terms of Mike Milbury for incompetence in terms of being a GM of the Islanders, but it's starting to be a contest. They've got some good young.
Shades of Milbury, though, right? I mean, so you got a great fan base. You have an amazing history with this franchise. Yeah. And now look what's come through in the last 20 years of it.
Yeah, it's been crazy. I mean,
it's absolutely nuts. And
it's such a shame because there's such an incredible fan base. I went to a playoff game there, one of the few playoff games they've had in the last decade. I went to a playoff game in Nassau Coliseum versus the Sabres when they played them in that series, and that place was absolutely as hopping as the Spectrum would get. Like you're talking about, and I was amazed. I'm like, this is a fan base that loves their hockey, because I had never seen that. You get in the playoff game, and there they are. This is just right there to me. It's a small building, felt like the Spectrum, and that fan base has been totally ignored. I mean, not ignored, but just has not been serviced. I mean, they've tried and give Snow some credit for some of the young players coming in now, but it's been such. But as far and picking up those two defensemen on Yom Kippur or whatever it was, that crazy day when he grabbed those two defensemen, and but since then, those two defensemen are still their two best defensemen.
Well, just to finish up with this, Kev, because we talked about this yesterday, and Russ had some insight on the whole Rangers situation, because he was in Philadelphia for the Rangers Flyers game on Saturday and said that there was Henrik Lundqvist talked to the team after the game, and there seemed to be like a little bit of a disconnect about what direction they were going. And then a few hours later, Elaine Vigneault was fired, and everybody's assuming now that they're going down the rebuild road. And then we heard the rumor yesterday about Kovalchuk. I don't know where they're going. At this point, if they sign Kovalchuk, I would think that the rebuild is, like you said, is going to be 60 days, and that's it.
Well, I mean, I think this is, and again, I have no idea what Tavares is going to do, but and I think this is very sincere, and their effort will be made to get Tavares if he goes to market. Yeah. And if you're John, the Rangers might look like the best option.
Right? Oh yeah.
You got a goaltender that you trust. There's still some players in place that you'd be comfortable playing with. You can still stay in the New York area where your family is comfortable. Everything's all good. So, if you can get Tavares and Kovalchuk, then maybe you don't even, why do you want to go there? You've already picked up some younger players that you can sort of use into the lineup. So
and you have 3 first-round picks. You don't have to give up any of them to get those two guys. You can maybe
I never buy the Rangers rebuild concept. I never can buy. I mean, they never have shown a tendency towards that. But we do have to get going. But thanks so much, guys. Thanks so much, Kevin. We will be back again tomorrow, where we will actually do some predictions for you guys for the games tomorrow night. Remember, without the buzz is just hockey. We will talk to you soon.